Need to shout, do I? Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Licensing Committee. It's my first one, so please be kind to me. But Michelle and Katie have done a bit of a script for me, so thank you very much. Hopefully we'll get through things nice and smoothly. Can I ask that all participants use your microphones when you're speaking, as the meeting is being webcast? And we'll start with the first item on the agenda, which is the appointment of our vice chairman. Does anybody have any nominations for the appointment of vice chair?
So could you tell me who I'm nominating? Marlowe. Apologies, I would like to nominate Councillor Marlowe.
Well, I'll second that nomination.
Thank you. So Councillor Marlowe will be our vice chair. Oh. Can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you support the appointment of Councillor Marlowe as vice chair? Thank you. And against? The motion is carried. Oh, sorry, abstentions? Thank you. So the motion is carried. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we've received an apology for absence from Councillor Ball, and Councillor Devonshire is substituting for him tonight.
Thank you. Members, we have before us the minutes from the committee meeting held on the 15th of March 2023. Are members content for me as chairman to sign these minutes? We should note that we're not agreeing to them, that they're accurate, we're just approving them to be signed. Can we have a show of hands? Sorry. So I'd like to propose that I sign these minutes from the 15th of March 23. Could I have a proposer? Thank you. And a seconder? Could we have a show of hands to indicate whether you support the motion for me as chairman to sign the minutes of the committee held on the 15th of March 23? So 4. And against? And abstain. So that motion is carried. Within those minutes, there was a recommendation from the previous committee for members of this committee to visit taxi ranks day and at night time. I've had a chat with the officers, and we suggest that we take this recommendation forward so that we do have an opportunity to look at the licensing activity within the district, but perhaps to broaden that remit a little bit to look at what more areas of licensing than just the taxi ranks. So I'll be working with our officers to arrange those opportunities. So if after the meeting you could let me know if you're interested, then we can set them up over the next few weeks. Okay. So item 4 of the agenda is the minutes. We have the minutes before us of the subcommittee meeting held on the 27th of April 23. These minutes are just for receiving, and so we don't require a vote. Item 5 of the agenda, Chairman's announcements. Excuse me. Members will be aware that the licensing subcommittee is held as and when required to determine applications under the Licensing Act 2003. And members must attend training before they can sit on those subcommittees. And we have some training scheduled for Tuesday, the 27th of June at 6 p.m. and it'll be held in person in the council chamber. A few of us did have some training set up a couple of weeks ago to get the first 1 or 2 subcommittees started. if you did attend those, we'd appreciate if you still attend this training on the 27th of June, because it will include the mandatory subcommittee training, but it will also include some wider information on our whole remit. So we'd appreciate if you did try and attend those. Okay, so item 6 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, item 7, review of licensing activity in Q4 2022-2023. These are found on pages 24 to 38 of your agenda. So Oliver Rawlings, our Services Manager in Licensing and Enforcement, will introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to the Licensing Committee. My colleague next to me is Brad Whaler. Some of you have met him. He is the Senior Licensing and Enforcement Officer, so he'll do lots of your subcommittees and lots of other work as well. Great font of knowledge comes to Licensing Committee as well. So the first report in front of you today is a quarterly report of licensing activity. So these reports are required to ensure that there's public oversight of the areas of licensing that we deal with. I don't propose to read every detail of it, but I'll happily run through the report so you can understand where it's coming from. So what we do is we give you an overview of what we've done in that quarter. We'll identify any trends, so complaints or licensing applications or increases in numbers, and then it's open to you to make any comments or questions. The format of the report is open to the committee, so if you feedback to the chair, if there's something else you want to see in it, we'll happily amend the report so it gives other details as well. So if the Wi-Fi was working, I'll be able to scroll down it. It's yours working. Oh, there you go, it's worked. Yours is working better than mine. I'll borrow yours. Thank you very much. It's useful. But I got it. No problem. So the background to it is we have a number of regimes that we operate, the main being alcohol, entertainment and late night refreshment. Taxis is another large one. And we also do the gambling. So those are the main areas that we report on during these reports. There are lots of other smaller regimes that we currently deal with, but they're lower risk, lower number applications. So the first part of it, of the report at 3.1, covers some of the complaints we've received in Q4 and the issues that we've faced. You'll see highlighted in there that we have 1.1 FTE, so full-time equivalent of enforcement officers. So we have 2 part-time enforcement officers that work both daytime and nighttime. They carry out regular weekend visits. So we visit festivals and events. They do market inspections. They do taxi inspections, work closely with police and environmental health. So there's lots that goes on via that route. We've covered some of the taxi enforcement bits. So there were 5 complaints received in relation to licensed vehicles in Q4. So from January to March. So there's a dispute over a pre-booked journey, a report of poor driving standards, some parking issues and behaviour falling below the standard expected of licence holders. 2 complaints in that area. So we deal with those in a number of ways. So taxi licensing is all about fitness and propriety and suitability to safely transport the public. So we have, as we get into more detail, we have licensing record point scheme where we can award points onto someone's their taxi license, not their actual physical DVLA license. If you accumulate enough points, then they come before you. Other ways we can revoke them, we can suspend licenses. There's other enforcement actions that can be taken. There's highlighted there was 2 complaints regarding unlicensed street traders. So that's people either static or mobile within the district. So that covers ice cream vans, burger vans, people on industrial estates, people in pub car parks selling food. The next section is performance monitoring. So we report on these quarterly. So there are targets set and we did really well in Q4, 100% all the targets. So I can answer any questions around how those are worked out and what those involve if members would like. We then move on to the appendices, which contains some of the further detail of where we go. So Appendix A covers some of the decision making and it covers the numbers of new applicants that we've had. You'll see there we have an English competency test for licensed drivers which is a requirement of the DFT now, sorry, Department for Transport, require local authorities to do it. There's decisions that have been made by me in relation to vehicles. There's decisions that have been made by Jonathan Gill in consultation with the Chair of Licensing Committee in relation to drivers and their fitness and propriety. So that was 2 new applicants, both refused. There's some detail about work being done on sustainability and climate change. So we've been working on a county-wide vehicle emissions policy, which is hopefully rolling out to all of the local authorities. As the chair's already mentioned, we're looking at taxi ranks. So there was a recommendation for members to come out and see how those operate and the issues around those. Q4, there was no applications that came before licensing subcommittee. So that would be premises license stuff under the Licensing Act 2003. And then there's a bit of detail at the end about the number of temporary event notices that we received in that quarter, which was up by 43 on the previous year for the same period. Essential reference paper B, again, is a lot more numbers and facts and figures. I won't go through the numbers of applications. You'll see for club premises and gambling, low amounts of applications. And then as you gradually work your way down, we've got our taxi renewals. So they run on a cycle. So drivers are 3-year licenses, vehicles are 1-year licenses. So every 3 years or so, we have a peak of driver's license applications, which is not this year or this quarter particularly. So we haven't got many applications for renewal this year. So that shows the trend has gone down, but there is a reason for that. There's some figures on street trading and markets, and then we come to some comparisons of total numbers of licenses. So for premises licenses, so that'll be alcohol and entertainment and late night refreshment, 636 in total. It's a pretty level amount. So despite the pandemic, lots of people have come back with smaller businesses. So the numbers have stayed pretty level. Club premises, always pretty level. We very rarely get any applications for that. Personal licenses is always increasing because once they're issued, they last forever. So there'll always be more than there previously were. When it says betting premises licenses, that's gambling, so betting shops. So that's gone down slightly. And then we get into the taxi numbers, so drivers and vehicles and operators. And then there's some further comparison of figures there which show trends. And then we have a bit at the bottom which records licensing record points issued in Q4 of 2023. No licensing record points were issued to the taxi trade, so that would be to drivers. And that essentially summarises that. So if you have any comments or questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Thank you. Yes, just a question with regard to the licence numbers. I know there's a restriction on the total numbers of Hackney carriage licences, and that I believe has been reviewed and is under continual review. But is there a restriction on number of other premises licences, alcohol licences, etc., across the district?
No, there isn't any restriction on the numbers. So we can consider cumulative impact. So if there's too many premises in a particular area, we can look at that. But currently there's no restrictions on numbers, and you couldn't have a blanket policy of saying 200 of this or 100 of that. That's unlawful.
Thank you. That makes perfect sense, and it also answers another question in advance. So thank you very much.
I noticed that the number of temporary event notices was 145 received. There were no objections from police or environmental health at all. And I just wondered, what's the background to 0 objections? Is there a lot of groundwork done beforehand, or is there some other reason why there are no objections at all?
You've identified there's a lot of work that goes in when one's received. The police or environmental health will generally, if they think there's going to be an issue, they'll contact the applicant, have a discussion. Sometimes they're amended, sometimes they're withdrawn. If they're for a premises that already has a premises license under the Licensing Act, conditions can be attached after an objection, but they may voluntarily agree to do those things, which isn't necessarily binding if they breach them, but if they comply, the police and environmental health may not put an objection in. So there is lots of work done. It's not just that things go through without being scrutinised. They're aware of the premises that may have had issues before, and everything's looked at.
So they may have objected to start with, but at the end of
Yes.
the application, there's no objection.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I'd just like to say, could you say well done to the team for achieving all their performance targets? Well done. We don't actually have to approve the report. So the proposal is that we confirm that members have reviewed and commented on the licensing activity in Q4 of 2022-23. So could I ask for a proposer for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Townsend. And a seconder? And so all those for that, can we have a show of hands to indicate whether you're in favour, please? Thank you. And against? And abstain? Thank you. So moving on to item 8, this is a review of the annual licensing activity in the financial year 2022 to 23. So that's a full year from 1st of April to the 31st of March. And again, Oliver will introduce that report.
So essentially a very similar report to the previous report. There's a couple of bits that I would identify in it as points of interest. The table under paragraph 3.1, the first type of inspection there is taxi inspections and investigations. And you'll see it dropped to 13. So that is based from routine work. So what they've seen when they're out and about. The thing we've had this year is with the premises coming back online and more festivals coming back, much more out of hours work's been done. So that leaves less time for the routine inspections of vehicles. I had a conversation with the chair. So just to assure members, vehicles do have MOTs. We do have inspection certificates. They are looked at. Any complaints are investigated. That's just the routine, what we would do, just sort of dipping in, but it shows a drop because other work was being done. That 3.5, it mentions the licensing record point scheme again, which is a compliance tool for issuing points, as I mentioned earlier. So over the year, 30 points were issued, split between 4 licence holders. There were other points issued, but they were appealed and the appeal was upheld, so those points were removed. Often at initial contact with those sort of things, a driver doesn't realise the gravity of what's happened, so they may not provide all the information that would back up their version of events. We do a full investigation and give everyone an opportunity to have their say. You then get to the performance indicators and you'll see over the year, it's not 100% everywhere. These are quite blunt tools in the way that they're worded. So there are reasons that I can explain why on occasions it's not 100%. But we still hit all of our targets for the year. Then there's a list of the premises that came to the applications that came to licensing subcommittee and the outcome. Some of which the venues you'll be familiar with. And then we go to, there's only one appendices for that, and that again is a comparison of figures from the previous financial year to the last financial year. So that summarises the report, Chair.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that report?
Yes, about the licensing record points. Can you just, I mean, I'm a new member anyway, so how does this work? Is it 12 points like a DVLA license? And if so, what happens when they get to 12 points?
So if a driver or a vehicle party, they accumulate 12 points within a 2-year rolling period. So they drop off after 2 years. If they do accumulate 12 points in 2 years, then they come before the licensing committee for consideration, with a licensing subcommittee for consideration of whether they're fit and proper to still hold their license. So it's there's lots of things we could do in legislation, so we could prosecute people that are really time consuming and not necessarily in the public interest for a small thing like they're required to wear their badge at all times and not have it in the vehicle, wear it. We wouldn't look to prosecute someone for that, but on a first offence you might get 3 points for it, which is a reminder to do it. If you don't do anything else for the next 2 years, it just drops off. Some of the offences we have a stepped approach, so the next time if you're caught for the same thing you get 6, the next time you'd get 9. That would put you in front of a committee, so they tot up. So it's I can share a link with the minutes to where it is, so you can see all of the stuff that's in there. It's quite a useful tool. The trade do know it's out there. No one's come before a licensing subcommittee for revocation for licensing record points in my memory, and I've been here quite a while. So I like to think it works.
Yeah, more of a general question indirectly relates to this. Is there a restriction for licensed Hackney carriages as to their locations for pickup, or do they have to be pre-booked?
So a Hackney carriage can be held in the street, doesn't have to be pre-booked. But unless it's a complicated, so our vehicles can only pick up in our area. Another licensed Hackney carriage from another area shouldn't pick up in our area unless it's subcontracted private. There's nuances to the law that allow it, which is obviously why Uber and companies like that can work across the country, and you get lots of TfL drivers outside. But essentially, Hackney carriages should only work in the area where they're licensed.
Thank you for that. I'll need to away from this meeting with regard to an issue that relates to that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. So in the same way as before, I'd like to propose that we confirm that members have reviewed and commented on the licensing activity in the financial year 22-23. So could I have a proposer, please? Thank you. And the seconder? So could we have a show of hands to indicate you're in favour, please? Thank you. And against? And abstain? Okay, item 9, urgent business. We have no urgent items to consider, and so that concludes tonight's meeting at 7:25. Thank you very much.